You're tuned in to Season 3 of the Bird Joy podcast, hosted by Dexter Patterson and Jason Hall. This podcast is for all the homies across the globe, a place to celebrate birds, community, and joy together. We're back with more stories from the birding world, more voices doing dope work in STEM, and more reasons to get outside and enjoy the birds. Are you ready for some bird joy? Let's go.
Today. Oh man, today we are honored. We are truly honored to be joined by a guest whose voice has helped shape how we see nature, how we carry joy, and how we find belonging in the great outdoors.
Yeah, Dr. J. Drew Lanham is a wildlife ecologist, a distinguished professor at Clemson University, and a writer whose work bridges not only science, but poetry, history, and most importantly, heart. He's the author of The Home Place, a memoir that explores identity, land, race, and kinship with the natural world.
His latest book, Joy is the Justice We Give Ourselves, is a soul-stirring collection of poetry that calls us to hold joy, even in the face of injustice. Dr. Lanham doesn't just study the wild, he lives it, teaches it, and gifts us the language to love it better.
I'm going to tell you this, you are at the top of the list of our dream guests for this podcast. We've been talking about it for a while. And to say that we've been looking forward to this conversation is a bit of an understatement. I will say that. Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Bird Joy podcast. I know our homies out there are going to love this episode. Let's go.
Dexter, Jason, thank you. Let's go.
Let's go.
This is all good. It's all good. And both of you, thank you for inviting me into this space where we can celebrate passion, where we can celebrate purpose, and where we can move our lives into sort of a different space with these non-human beings who inspire us to be better human beings. That's kind of funky, right? I mean, yeah. But beautifully so, in a way that we can be in a space and be ourselves, right? And be ourselves. And that, for me, you'll hear me say, not only is it about identifying birds, but it's about identifying with birds. And so I know that both of you, Jason and Dexter, both of y'all are into it. So it's my honor, it's my pleasure to be here today.
Man, I'm so fired up, bro. I'm so fired up.
One of the things that I really loved about The Home Place is that I found myself immediately relating to certain situations, descriptions of places, feelings in nature. And that's what immediately hooked me. And I actually didn't read it first. I actually listened to the audiobook first because I enjoy the way you speak. And I wanted to hear the inflection of the stories, right? And now anything I read of yours, I hear your voice in my head when I do it. Can you take us back to your childhood on The Home Place? Like what moments or mentors, like your grandmother and her redbirds, like what pivotal memories do you have that first connected you to nature?
Wow. It was like from the beginning almost, because we were so far back in the woods. Backwoods doesn't quite do it justice, really. And as a kid, it's being surrounded with green. It's having birds as your best friends. It's knowing that the land supports you, that it's not an adversary, but it's an ally. It's being in wonder because there are these little black commas in a puddle, right? That make you pause, and those black commas turn out to be tadpoles. And in that moment of pausing to understand that, life can exist in that place, and then hearing a bird above you and looking up and seeing not just the red bird that your grandmother had taught you about, but a red bird with black wings. And then you got to find out, what kind of red bird is this? So, those were moments, and they were like daily for me because I grew up between two households. And so that means, in a way, I kind of didn't grow up in a household. And wildness became the place where I was most comfortable. It became the place where I didn't have to worry about being judged or getting a whipping or getting in trouble. And so the birds again and wildness became the place where I was most comfortable. So I learned in some ways how to talk to birds. I learned how to be a naturalist. I learned how to be me in that space. And so it was uh, it was a little paradise in ways, guys. The thing that's funny was that when I would go to school, all the suburban kids would talk about skating, and they had sidewalks, and they could ride their bikes on pavement, and they would go to skating rinks and birthday parties. I didn't do any of that. It was isolating in ways, and so that sort of carries through with me today and how I find myself. Right.
I love it. You mentioned birds allows us to be ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you found yourself early. You found out that nature just wasn't background for you early. You found that it was a part of who you were early, and allowed you to be your full self. That is super powerful, because I think so many of us, and myself included, struggle to walk in their purpose in life, and to be able to get that at such a young age. I think that is just a true blessing, Drew.
Well, Dexter, it was right that, and things just came naturally. They fell naturally, but I wasn't always comfortable in it because I thought that other people had it better than me, right? Because they had some conveniences or things that sounded fun that most kids were doing. I would see stuff on TV that other kids would do, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't go out and skate. So I've got to figure out how to do something that's fun. And so, yeah, birds did, and wildness did allow that sort of freedom. But I'll tell you what, Dexter, part of what happened to me, finding it early and sort of being in it, but not really understanding the value of it, led to me losing it for a while. I sort of let peer pressure and maybe insecurity take it away when other people began to look at me and tell me who I was. I wasn't just being me. They began to tell me, oh, you're a black kid it's good at math and science. You should be an engineer. Black people don't do what you claim you want to do. An ornithologist? What's that? No, you need to be an engineer. You need to make money this way. And that thing that you say you love, you really don't love it that much, because that's not what we do.
Wow. Makes me think of Les Brown. He has a quote, other people's opinion of you is not your reality. Shout out to Les Brown, because when I hear that, I got goosebumps listening to that, because I felt like that for so long. And that what kept me from sharing my love for birds with people for so long, because they'd be like, birds. And honestly, I've never been happier until I found birds, until I started to embrace that bird nerd in me. Thank you for saying that. I know there's a lot of people out there that have felt like that, or maybe feeling like that, and hopefully they can find some solace in those words.
Well, it is a matter of, loving self first. You think that by satisfying others, that by jumping through all the hoops that they put up for you, that you're going to please them. And for a good portion of my life, that's who I've been, wanting to please others. So if they said I was supposed to be so-and-so, then I was going to be so-and-so and do so-and-so. And it really led to kind of a dangerous point, right? And depression and really, again, insecurity. So finding the light, self-love, in a way, takes you to a different place. And birds, again, are in that space to be non-judgmental. Birds aren't trying to tell me what to be. They're just being themselves. They're so busy being themselves, which is what we ought to be all busy doing, being ourselves, instead of trying to arrange somebody else's life. And so there were lessons daily in what birds are and what I am and what I strive to be.
So well put. And that's something I absolutely relate to. And I think Dexter as well, just being in these STEM fields, right? I spent most of my career in a lab, and sometimes kick myself like, man, you love them birds. Why'd you go get in this lab? But it's been a good and great career. But it's something that, similarly, if you're a black or brown person good at science, there's a certain path that you kind of get pushed down a little bit. And I was there with a bunch of my other peers. And it's funny how much of us now are now getting back into the outdoors and trying to connect with this land. And Drew, on that front, you've said the land, in spite of its history, still holds hope. What does claiming belonging to these landscapes that carry, say, such a history and weight, like what does that mean in terms of finding hope? Like, that seems like such a counterintuitive thought to some, you know?
Well, yeah, and I get it, right? There's a lot of pain, blood, sweat, tears in the land, not just in the South, all over this country, for us, for our indigenous brothers and sisters and others. And so that's not our fault. Right? That's not our fault. And so the land that we were forced to toil on is also land that supported us. It's not the land's fault. It's not the land's fault. And so I have to look at land. I have to look at a tree, even a tree that may have had violence visited upon it, right? And I need to be in community with that tree. We need to have a conversation because we've both had the violence visited upon us. In that way, I want us, Black and people of color, I want us to embrace nature in a way that people have pushed us away from it. And so for many years, when people would ask me the question, well, how can we get more Black and brown folks involved in nature? And we start going down all these paths of, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. Well, really what needs to happen is the folks out there who want us involved need to look at how we are involved. It's not new. It's not new. So in order for us to embrace it, and in order for us to really have the stake in it that we have put in it, the investment that we've put, we don't need to have people telling us how we should be in any sort of way. And not, I'm not dismissing well-meaning folks who would say, oh, you know, it'd be nice if you were involved in this or nice if you were involved in that. Come join us. But no, maybe how about you come join me? See how I'm doing it. So it's like I tell folks, you know, I grew up fishing, and fishing was critical. It was important in my exposure to the outdoors. And I had a ton of fun doing it. And it wasn't just about the fish on the end of the line, but it was the whole experience. It was the rushing water. It was hearing all these birds around me. And now I wish I could go back and, you know, call these birds right by name. But at the end of the day, the fishing wasn't about catch and release until it was a pan of grease. That sustenance that those fish provided was food for the body, but the experience was food for the soul. So we have been experiencing that. The only way that we have come to this point in our history is because we rode on the wings of joy. That's the only way. You can't live in despair and find yourself really anywhere but in some hellish place. And so to overcome as we have overcome, there's been joy there. To overcome as we've overcome, people have looked skyward and seen birds, and they may not have called them wood thrush, scarlet tanager, or bobolink. We called them by some name that helped us recognize them as individuals who had distinct things to say. Back to that tide of land, to have people, and think about this, all right? When people are trying to push you away from something, you need to hold fast. And there's a history of people, when we've had the chance to be on land, of them pushing us away from it, of them divesting us from it. You know, you think about Special Field Order 15, the 40 acres and a mule, when William Tecumseh Sherman didn't know what to do with all those refugees that followed him on the march from Atlanta to the sea. And he telegraphs Lincoln, and Lincoln says, you handle it. And Sherman, who was no friend of the Negro, but Sherman did the right thing. Sherman said, you know what? For people to work the land here, 40 acres and a mule. Well, then somebody decides after Lincoln's assassination, they want to make America great again. So what does Johnson do? Johnson takes that land away from us, divests us of the land. And then we are cast back into, you know, enslavement part 2 with sharecropping and Jim Crow. Again, I look at that situation and I say, that doesn't mean you run from land. Again, the land didn't wrong you, right? Policy and humans who made the policy wronged you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Access
I want us
has
to
been an issue
That's been an issue
for a long time.
Yeah, and
and
it's
that's
such
it.
and it's I don't think a lot of us enter the land with that thought, right? Is that the land is this unbiased, essentially arbiter of our joy. It does not carry the history of the humans that step foot on it. And that's interesting because we wanted to talk about the 9 rules for the Blackbird watcher, right? Asking ourselves constantly, are we in a safe place? You know, I do want to ask you if that has evolved with you as time has gone on, especially in these current times. I realize now that when I ask myself that question, I don't ask myself that question about the tree or the bird or even the bobcat that may be out there in the woods somewhere. Like, I'm literally asking it about the humans that may be in that space more than I am the land itself. And that's just such a profound thought. So is that how you kind of enter the space now still? Is like acknowledging the land is that kind of tabula rasa, blank space for you to find joy?
Exactly. Blank slate, right? Look, I've been fortunate to be in landscapes where I'm just another lump of protein. I may be dark meat for a grizzly, but on that day, what it is going to choose is based in part on me being aware and me being respectful. But I will tell you, I have never felt safer than being in those spaces. And so, no, it's my responsibility to know, I see the bear and I understand that I need to keep a distance. I need to be respectful. I let the bear know that I'm there in a calm voice, and I speak and I go on my way, watch maybe from a respectful distance. Bear maybe rises up, gains some sense of who I am by its nose, and then drops to all fours, or maybe gives me a warning and says, hey, you know what, you're too close. Then I move back. I'm respectful. We have a relationship in that way. I don't go on land and think, oh man, the land's going to get me. I can go to a place, right? A place that may have land under it where I could say, those people here don't have my best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. So that's, when I talk about range maps and I talk about that sort of concept, I know that there are places that I can point to on a map and I can say, well, you know what? People there did something and are doing things that aren't safe maybe for me to be there. So if I want to go, see, I don't know, Chucker, for example. Well, I'm going to find somewhere to go see Chucker that's not a white supremacist homeland, so to speak. Maybe I'm not going to go to the stovepipe of Idaho to see those birds, because there's some people up there who would just as soon see my life end.
Yeah.
But I don't blame that. Man, I have some lovely people, great friends in Idaho, but I don't blame the land. I don't blame the chucker. I don't blame the rocks and the scree slope where the chucker might be. It's those people who don't have the decency to see my humanity, to see that kind of humanity. That's who I blame.
It's so wild because so many of us, and when I say us, I'm talking about Black and brown folks, we lost that connection to the land. I was talking to my dad, and my family also grew up in Tunica, Mississippi, and they were on sharecropped land, and my grandma was born in a barn, and they used to race hogs when they were little kids and stuff. And then they moved to Memphis. And they lost this connection to the land. They no longer grew their own food. When they first, it was kind of funny because when they first moved there, they would be like harvesting animals on the porch and stuff. And the city folks thought they were crazy, right? Like they're like, who is these country boys from Mississippi coming up into Memphis, skinning raccoons and deer on the porch and stuff? Right. So like I was just like laughing with my dad about this, but at the same time, I was heartbroken because not only did they have land, they had houses. And along the way, they lost the land. They lost the houses because relatives passed on and they didn't have a plan in place to pass that on to his only and oldest, right? His only son, right? So I started thinking about like that disconnect, and that disconnect kind of started to create fear where like, oh, that's not for us. Those rural areas is not for us. Those woods, are you crazy? Those woods are not for us. And when I think about you and when you talk about in the home place about Black men being the rare bird, we're the oddity, I think that's where that kind of started. It kind of started because the disconnect from those lands from generation to generation started to happen because our ancestors were enslaved and lynched and all these different things in these places. And we have to try to reconcile that as we're starting to search for our joy. And I start looking at us now, Drew, and I'm seeing the rise of Black Birders Week, right? Shout out to Black AF and STEM and all the people there that have been leading the charge there. But it's just given us so much visibility for Black and brown folks outside. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Do you feel like that movement, in itself has helped us make progress? Does it give you hope? What else still needs to change there?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that movement, and you look, that movement was born in the shadow, in that ghastly shadow of George Floyd's murder, and seeing it grow from there and involve, but not just involve, but immerse people in us. That is, again, to understand who we are. And not just to identify us and to cast us all into the same lot, but to say, that's Dexter, that's Jason, that's Drew, that's Lauren, that's Murray, that's all these people. And they are individuals who have shared passion. They share culture. They share a deep history, but they are individuals. And so when you get to the point where people can say, oh, well, there's one or two, but you say, wait a minute, I can't name all of them, then that is improvement. That's hope. And when people don't drop their binoculars to just say hi to you, Dexter, hi, Jason, hi, Drew, because you're different, but they drop their binoculars to say hi to you because they want to tell you where the Swainson's warbler is or whatever bird it is, then, you're moving into a different space. And I tell folks, and maybe I said it in 9 Rules, it's funny, and I guess, as my father used to say, laughable but not funny, and how you'd have people who could identify birds almost by the rictal bristle. And they would see these minor differences in birds. You're like, wait a minute, you saw what? But then they couldn't tell us apart, right?
Nope.
Because we were all cast into that same pot, that same lot.
I am from Wisconsin all the time when I talk to people.
Yeah, I used to get that all the time. If it's 2 of us at the same time together, they don't know what to do.
Well, look, I will tell you, that Dexter, Jason, we have played with that. My brothers, we have played with that. We said, we've sort of like taken bets. Let's see how many times I'm called you and you are called me. And sure enough, we would come back and we would set it over under. We would say, brother, Dudley Edmondson or Doug Gray.
Shout out to Doug.
Dudley and Doug. And I say, okay. And we come back and we say, oh, yeah, they call me Drew 4 times. I say, well, they call me Dudley 6. And, they call me Doug. So we said, man, what do we have to do? Let's get, I don't know, bird jerseys with our name.
In the field now?
Right.
That's crazy.
No,
That's
you got to
crazy.
recognize me by my rictal bristles.
Right.
So it's all good. You gonna look at my epaulets.
Oh, I'm done right now. This is so funny. I'm getting name tagged. I guess that's just more proof that we're the rare bird and the oddity. I guess they don't know what to do.
But we're coming. And it is hopeful though. You asked the question. It is very hopeful. And again, I think about the time spent with Lauren Farr and in being out in the field and watching her progress and watching her grow and watching others and seeing y'all, right? Like I said, Dexter, you saying, come on, you want to see the screech owl? Come on, let's see it. And just going at it in this way and unabashedly being you and loving these birds and being yourself. That's hopeful. That's encouraging. That inspires me. And so we don't have to be anybody else. We can be ourselves and love birds. And that's joy. That's hope.
Well, number one, I'm going to say if anyone is putting down binoculars to tell me where Swainson's warbler is, I am accepting all friendships on that front.
You have my phone number now.
Man, we had one touchdown in the middle of Philly last year, in the middle of a tiny little pocket park downtown Old Old Town Philly last year, and the homies sang for, had to be a week and a half, just first bird in the morning, and it just echoed through these empty concrete buildings that surrounded it. It was absolutely incredible. It was my first one, and people were, I was like, hey guys, what does the song sound like? And they were like, listen, when you hear it, you will know.
You know it.
And it's just this pointed, melodic, and it just, how like sometimes you hear a pileated and it kind of echoes through the forest, and you kind of know, you can hear that more than you do when you hear like a northern flicker.
Yeah.
That's Swainson's, man. That is a bird that I will never forget. So when you mentioned it, it made me think of that experience.
Well, it's, and that's what makes it special. That's what puts us in a space with birds to love them. And I'm not afraid to use that word. And I think that's important, that's another dimension of joy is love. And so to love birds, to recognize that individual who sang for a week or more, and the echo, and here it is, sort of out of place, right? Out of place, but still being itself. It wasn't quiet. Yeah. It was like, I got a song to sing. It's that time, and I need to be heard. And when you watch a bird sing, and that's one of the ways I like teaching people bird song. It's one thing for them to hear the song. It's another thing for them to see a silent bird. But when they see a bird sing, a couple of years ago, I was watching a wormy sing from a perch, and it's not the most melodic song. It's just sort of this staccato chip. Or trill, and finally seeing that bird and watching that bird's whole body just vibrate.
I love it.
And I watched that bird for more than an hour because it was sitting just in a shaft of sunlight in this deep southern Appalachian cove where it should be. And it was just singing its heart out, but its whole body reverberated. And I couldn't call that anything else but joy. And I'm making all kinds of assumptions, and that science can't prove, but science can't disprove. So in that instance, that you saw the Swainsons, or I saw the wormy, or watch a robin. I've been watching robins just, they'll run across the lawn, they'll do what they do, they'll pull the worm, they'll cock their heads, they'll do all the robin things, but then you can see a robin just sit down in the yard, right? And just sit, and it just sits there. And I watched this bird one day just sit, and it was just chilling. And Roger Tory Peterson said, robin is the bird that everybody knows. Well, I really want to know you, robin. I want to know, that peace, especially these days. That peace to be able to be still for a moment and just enjoy what is. So that's what birds do for me.
Y'all know I love me a robin. That is the state bird of Wisconsin. I always tell people, I think they take them for granted because, like you mentioned, everybody knows a robin. I talk to people and all I know is a robin. I thought every bird was a robin. But it's so funny. I still get so excited every time I see a robin. And that's when I was like, dude, birds are for you. Because I noticed that I get excited. Jason and I have talked about this. I get excited when I see every little male house finch. And I get really fired up by these common, regular birds because I know we're not promised to have them. I'm not promised another day here. We're not promised to have these birds this year or next year or whatever it may be. And I remember telling people, what if we called it the American thrush? Would it be cooler?
Look, hey, or guess what? Robin, you are who you are. And I used to, science tells us, well, we shouldn't name wild animals, blah, 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 blah. I tell people, you call that bird, you can call a robin Turdus migratorius, you can call it American robin, you can call it whatever. If you respect that being and who it is, then I think that puts you in a space and you watch it respectfully. And if you're truly noticing, you'll see the robin notice you. And relationships develop between us and wildness, if you're respectful, that non-human beings will sort of show themselves to you in these ways. And so in that aspect, I think that those common birds that we see that we take for granted, like you said, Dexter, at some point somebody said, it's just a passenger pigeon. Oh my God, there are billions of them. Somebody said that. And so we don't want to, hey, it's just too many of them, right? Just, oh my God, they killed 1 million of them, but they keep coming. To not have some bird with a name be the last bird, it's okay to think about all the birds and to identify with them in ways that you understand they're individuals. I remember back during the pandemic watching cardinals, and I'll admit, I was sitting in the backyard and I kept waiting for rose-breasted grosbeaks. I was like looking and checking time and saying, okay, y'all, come on, I need that flash, because I mean, those were dire times, remember? Because you would check your stuff to see if you could breathe, if stuff was, what was going on. But then I started noticing cardinals. I mean, and they were all over the place. I mean, then I started seeing them as individuals and noticing that every cardinal wasn't the same red, and that there was this one female cardinal with an overbite. and so they became individuals to me. And so I try to treat birds in that way. The variation in color for house finches, Dexter, you talk about them and watching them. Or the other day, I saw my first breeding plumage goldfinch. And as quote unquote common as goldfinches are, when you first see that, it's startling, right? You're like, whoa, hey, what was that? Meteor that just streaked across the yard, and it's a goldfinch. Then you look at the female and you look at the subtleties of those colors and sort of their own individual beauty. And so all of that puts us in a different space to appreciate birds. And I hope it puts us in a different space to appreciate one another. I've always thought maybe if I had a bird name, it would be more memorable and people wouldn't call me by somebody else's name. And we all make mistakes, right? I've made mistakes in calling people other names. But, when it becomes a sort of systemic thing and people don't care, and it's just a robin. It's just a cardinal. There goes that person. He's this or he's that based upon some assumption of who it is that I'm supposed to be in your eye. Well, then that's being dismissive. And I don't want to be dismissive of beings. And birds teach me that. They teach me not to be dismissive of those individuals that are different, not to assume that all of them are the same. There are lessons to be learned. And I think, back to the home place, that's part of what happened for me there. Because I talk about bobwhite quail all the time that were common birds when I was a boy, and from y'all's Mississippi home places, they were common there. But guess what? They're not common anymore. They're not common anymore. I haven't seen a quail in the wild in about 5 years.
I love them too. I didn't even know what they were for a while. I went to Cape May and I was there trying to find a scissortail flycatcher or something that someone had seen the day before, and there was no one else at Cape May Point in this parking lot. And I got there before the sunrise, and I'm standing on this boardwalk and I just hear that and I'm like, what in the world? And I hear an echo from across the other way, then another one over here. And I'm like, this is before Merlin, and I was kind of early in my birding career. And like, I turned around and this chunky little thing is sitting on the rail, right? Like 10 feet from me. And I watched it whistle and then hop down and run away like a little weirdo. And I didn't even care about the flycatcher anymore. I was like, who invented this bird? Because I need to give them credit. It is the most amazing little thing. And then I got sad because when I started to I would put stuff on the chat or whatever, and people were like, yeah, they used to be all around Southern New Jersey. They used to be here. They used to be there. So really lucky that you got to see those. And it made me sad that we don't have them anymore, and I could imagine what it was like back in the day to wake up to that cacophony of those birds sometimes just echoing through the pine forest down south. That had to be tremendous.
Well, and that's how things change, let me tell you, first of all, Cape May Point, nobody being there. First of all,
it was tremendous.
And then to see that bird, but that's when we have these relationships. That's when we begin to bond with birds in this way, in the unexpected, and you're alone. And suddenly it's just you and that quail, that bobwhite quail, and you got to watch it sing. And you'll never, ever forget that, Jason. And you can almost, when you're close enough to some birds, you can almost feel their songs. And that gets you to a point of, man, all kinds of things. For me as a kid, it was wanting to be a bird, sometimes wanting to be a quail, sometimes wanting to be a hawk, sometimes just wanting to know what that bird's life was like. And so I feel it's a privilege to be able to study birds and to have birds as my work. And I'll go ahead and use the B word, man. It's a blessing, really. All kinds of ways for me to be able to spend the time that I do with them, and with folks like y'all who love birds. And we can say it, man, we love birds. We love
them. Love them.
There we go. That was thrush-like.
Yeah, see, sometimes I get lucky,
Yeah. There's no other birding podcast where you get live singing from Dexter. So, people need to know.
That was pretty sweet, that right there.
Oh, you talk about navigating both grief and wild awe. And this really kind of like made me think of a recent conversation I had with Rodney Stotts, the master falconer, right? Author of Bird Brother. And Rodney, he's been, these last month or two, he's just been really, really kind of a key part of my life. I kind of been going through some struggles. And he was like, call me. Not keep your head up, none of that. He said, call me. And I was like, okay. So I called this brother, and he was, man, I can't tell you what it meant for somebody to just sit there and listen and not judge. And I think about how we sit and we listen to birds and we're with the birds. I felt like he treated me like that he just listened to me, and he was trying to learn where my pain was coming from. And he started guiding me in a way where you talked about how you give birds names and you can call them what you want to call them. In his book, he has a chapter where he talks about how he had named an eagle after his mother. And then one day his son calls him saying that there's a bald eagle stuck in a fence, and it happened to be the bird he named after his mother. And his mother had just passed. So in my mind, like when I read these words and I started thinking about Rodney, and when he got there, he said, that was just a message from my mom. That was Dippy telling me she's okay, because he freed the bird and it flied away, and it started doing his real eagle call, right? Not the red-tailed hawk that we hear in the movies all the time. Yeah. So I just start thinking about grief and awe and how birds have helped me get through some of the lowest points in my life. Some of the lowest points in my life. And when I'm out there, I feel a little better. I get a little more hope. I just, talk to us, talk to the people about, I'm choking up a little bit. Talk to us about how how birds have, help you navigate both grief and wild awe.
Well, Dexter, it is so much of life is navigating the valleys and sometimes being in the muck and mire. And so to begin to understand, the importance of those moments, not just of escape necessarily, but how do you cope? And sometimes you need to lighten the load, especially when, you're in those low places. And how do you lighten that load? Well, for me, it's been bird song. It's been hearing a wood thrush. It's hearing a bird that I haven't heard in months because it's migrated away, but then that bird somehow appears, and it's almost the same, or maybe the same day from last year, in the same tree, and the bird is singing, and you're like, wait a minute, is that you? You're back? Oh man, you're back from the Amazon, Scarlet Tanager. How are you? How did you escape forest falcons? And how did you make it across the Gulf of Mexico? How did you get back here to this spot? And in that moment of recognizing that miracle of evolution, that one being that made it through the worst and the best that nature has to offer, and there it is, gracing you with his presence.
That's the hope.
That's the hope. And in that moment, right, you're like, because you think about all the things that an individual bird has to go through to return to us. And I say that not selfishly as if we own it, to return to us in a way that gives us joy, that allows us to look and say, I know you. No, not by field guide, but by feel guide. Yeah. I know you. And that's hopeful to me. So that's helped me deal with a lot of things, let's just say. And and I'm not afraid to say, I've struggled with depression and, and then the times compound it, right? The times we're in compound it. And, I want to be strong and do what I can to help us get through tough times, but I got to get me through tough times first.
Amen.
And so the way that I frequently do that is I got to be out there. I got to walk around, got to focus on someone else. And that someone else might be a bird. And one day again, it was the worm-eating warbler. Another day it was an eastern towhee bird. My grandmother used to call it Joe-ree. And you know how towhees usually want to be hidden, right? This bird just sat. It just sat. And I could see that red eye in the bird. And it just sat there. And he just preened and turned this way and that. And that was just peace for those moments. So, whatever you're suffering through, I think for me, birds are a meditation. They're a meditation. They're the embodiment of meditation. And no matter what they're doing, those loons this morning, just watching them and trying to understand, how you do what you do. I'm not thinking about anything else. And I'm in a different sort of place. And to be in a different sort of place allows me to cope and to gain some strength that then when I have to face this thing head on, I can face it head on.
Love it.
And so Rodney, man, he's a real one. I met him in Maryland.
He is, man.
Ago.
Like I swear, I was like, I said, the universe makes no mistakes. Like I was like, I am so lucky to have you in my life right now. He texts me and just like me and you, Jay. Like he texts me, he'll check on me, and like I just feel so lucky, to have somebody like that and his wisdom and what he's gone through and who he is. And just hearing you speak those words you just spoke, like you always say, joy is the justice we give ourselves. And those birds that we all love, we're going to use that word today. That is our joy. That's our justice during these times, these unjust times that I think all of our people are living through. They're attacking everything about us. They're attacking our words. They're attacking our institutions and like everything. Like they don't want us to be happy. They don't want us to have joy. And I think in these moments now, more than ever, we just got to keep on like chasing that, keep on going to get it because we deserve it.
We deserve it. We have, I don't feel like anybody has to earn joy, but if anybody has earned joy, is us. So, my grandmother used to say and sing, and, joy, the world didn't give it, the world didn't take it away. And now what is new is that you're going to have to face people who know that and who lean on the ancestors in a way to say, oh, okay, all right, this is what has to be done. And part of that is taking by choice, sometimes by force, your joy. So if that joy is taking time to be outside, you take your time to be outside. If taking your joy is being what others tell you can't be, you be the ornithologist, you be the mammologist, you be the cosmetologist, you be who it is that you are and what drives your heart. And see, that's new for a lot of people. Right? That see us from the outside and say, well, they'll fold. No, it's not going to happen. I have birds in part to thank, and I have kindred spirits to thank for that, who will help to lift me up just like thermals help to lift the red-tailed hawk up. And you'll watch that hawk and you're like, how does that bird hang up there like that? And we know it's thermodynamics, and it's solar convection, all that stuff, that lingo that we can throw. But ultimately, there's a mystery. There's a mystery to it. And I revel in the mysterious because the mysterious is often the miraculous. And when I can experience that, then joy is not far behind. So birds, man, they give that. And I love them for it.
Has that been, have you had an experience this spring so far that comes to mind that really like, okay, we finally made it through winter and it just filled up we always talk about filling up our cup here. And anytime I talk to Dexter, my cup is full. But like anything come to mind this spring so far this year?
Hearing the first Louisiana water thrush. And I usually hear those birds mid to late March here. And on the farm, everything, is sort of new. The birds that are here and trying to understand who's here. That was hearing that first bird, that first Louisiana water thrush of the spring, and then hearing 3 of them. And it sounds like they're setting up in sort of the same place, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, y'all find my place. Y'all find this place good enough to maybe settle in here, do your Louisiana water thrush thing and hopefully make little thrushlettes. And thinking about where those birds came from to find this place, a little band of white crowned sparrows that are hanging out up at the head of the road. I would hear that song, and to know those birds are there, but that those birds maybe are going to carry a message to other white crowned sparrows, maybe as far north as tree line and the subarctic alpine tundra, right? I don't know where those birds are going, but they might be going there. And that boom, it blows your mind.
Crazy. Like, every time I'm like, no way. Like, how is this possible?
Right. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay. And I told them, I said, y'all tell your friends that it's good here, right?
Yeah. Tell the homies.
Right. I got some hedges. I got some hedges for you.
So you talk to the birds too. I love it. I'll just talk to them, and I'll be like, I feel like they understand me. They feel me. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, hey, that's the homies right here.
Oh, yeah. Dexter, they do.
And I get all excited. It's funny because I always tell people, you don't got to be quiet around birds. Like, you can get excited. There are times to be quiet, but you know what? There are times to celebrate them too. And I'm not shushing people. I'm not telling people to be quiet. And like, there are a lot of people out there like that. And I see more birds than them. So I would just say the science don't back you up, homie. The science don't back you up because I'm sharing all this bird joy, and these birds just be flocking to a homie. They just be like, what up, Dex? What up, Dex? And that's how I can say, you ready? Let's go. Because we got that kind of bond, So
that kind of bond. Right. And again, there's that whole deal of being in relationship with nature, being in relationship with nature. And if we drop back and if we were to listen to our ancestors before they were brought here, but then even as they were here, if we, talk to folks like our indigenous friends, then we begin to understand being in relationship with nature is not some magical, mystical thing. It's understanding that respect, that respect begats respect, and ultimately understanding that who you are and who some non-human being is, that there's this exchange, even if it's, the trees that we're exchanging breath with, or even beings that may give themselves to us as food, that ultimately, guess what we are going to be? Food. We're gonna be food. So I like thinking about things in that cyclical way. It's not from A to B. It's all around, and it's in between. Birds again teach us those lessons, and so when those magical moments this spring, like yesterday, I heard the first great crested flycatcher of the year. I'm like, what? Are you early, dude? What's going on? And then I heard another one, and they're not going full on weep 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 yet, but it's just a little weep. Yeah. Like I'm here. Yeah. I'm not fully in yet, but I'm gonna be looking for some snake shit soon to put in a nest, hanging out this box, so you can know that I'm here. And that is joy to me. Those moments of return and reunion with these migratory birds that say, you know what? To hell with your borders, I'm coming. And I'm going to make a home here. Love me. And I'm like, okay, I will.
Yeah, bet, right? Like, I love that. Deal. It's like the flycatcher showing up and he's like, hey, you, I'm here. Or if you're in Philly, it's Europe. I've always wondered this too, because we've kind of leaned, we've talked about the things that science can and can't do, and we're all in STEM, we're all STEM professionals here. And you've said that saving wildlife takes more than data, right? It takes poets and prophets. And so how have you found a way to blend that science and storytelling that sparks change. And I always wondered this too. If I was a student in one of your courses, would I find that connection as well? And are you able to weave that in for folks to give them more than just the statistics and the data? And how have you found that to be effective when it comes to teaching either students or non-students?
Jason, I really began to push the poetry when I sort of stepped outside of myself in a lecture. And this was back with the announcement of the rediscovery of the ivory bill. And I got all emotional before class, and I went into class. And because all that I was talking about in this conservation biology class was extinction and how bad things were. But here was hope. And so I got emotional in that moment. And it really was a sea change for me because, here I was showing slide after slide after slide of statistics on just the world going to hell in a handbasket. And you could look at people and they were listening, but I think I was also driving some of them to despair. And not that we don't need to understand the science or understand what climate change is doing or fragmentation is doing or that the extinction vortices are spinning ever faster. But why do this if all is lost? And so, like Emily Dickinson, hope being the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, I wanted to not just give the medicine, but people also understand that in order to take the medicine and us get better, you got to have a little treat every now and again. You got to have a little sweet with that. So, that's part of it. Also, just what will people consume? Right? What will people consume? And, I used to tell my students, look, you can publish in some fancy journal that is essential. That is what we have to do as scientists. It's what we need to keep doing as scientists. But I also encourage them to publish in glossy and lay publications with pretty photos or whatever, or art, or to write poetry. Because if I put that journal in a dentist's office on a table beside the glossy, 100 people come in that dentist's office, how many people are going to pick up the journal? 2?
Not a lot. I mean, me, because I'm a nerd, but, everybody else, though.
The 3 of us might say,
maybe us, right? Researchers and scientists.
Let me read this abstract.
Right. Yeah.
But it's all about ultimately, one of my mantras is that every policy begins with a single person. Every policy. I tell them, whether it's saving birds or dropping bombs, somebody somewhere is making a decision whether something goes forward or not, whether the bomb bay doors are opened, whether the missile is launched, whether the habitat is created, or whether the water is made clean. Somebody is making that decision. So why not let that person be you? And the thing that creative writing and that poetry does is there's a freedom of expression there that can't come through in the scientific writing because, we're being objective and we're being reviewed by peers in a different way. I feel like with the attention span that people have these days, it's about, I think, the average traffic light, probably less than 3 minutes, depending on where you are. But how do I get to you in 3 minutes? How do I get to you in 3 minutes? How do I become the earworm in your head? That song that you have with you forever. How does that happen? And you got to feel it. You got to feel it. It's just like the music that we might listen to that we feel, right? And that there are rhythms to it. I think that for us to do what needs to be done from a conservation perspective, we need to feel it. And again, that's why you hear me talking about, this idea I have of a feel guide. So all the science that tells us that 3 billion birds at least have disappeared in the last 50 years, we have data that helps us understand that. But what does it feel like? You know what it feels like? It feels like not seeing birds that were once common. It feels like an absence. It's almost like having something taken away and you're like, wait a minute, something's missing. And then you're like,
it's heartbreaking. Like the quail you all were talking about,
right, Dexter,
becomes less and less and less and less common. And it is heartbreaking. And Drew, as I was preparing for this interview, I listened to your BirdNote episode where you read for Lindsay. And shout out to our Milwaukee club leader, Rita Flores-Waskowski, she sent it to me and she told me she ugly cried after she heard it. And as usual, Jason, Rita was right.
She was
I bawled
right.
like a freaking baby after listening to that. And in that episode, you talked about how words have meaning and how you find inspiration in the things that are being said around us. I'd love to know what words have been inspiring you lately. Are there any new poems you're working on that reflect what you're hearing in the world right now?
Wow. The words that I hear are the words of strength and power. And for people not to cast their eyes down because of fear, but to look forward in a way that says, oh, I'm coming. I'm still, look, I'm here. And so in that way, I've been spending a lot of time. I can look right up here to my right, and I can look at Brother James Baldwin, and I think about so many of his words and how geniusly he created in the midst of some of the worst of times. But ultimately, what Baldwin said he said it all comes down to love. That was the end message for James Baldwin. And so, and listening to him, it's almost like hearing him for the first time, hearing his voice, not just reading him, but then hearing the voices of birds again, the first red-eyed vireo the other day. And I'm like, oh, there you are.
Hey, now.
Before it gets lost in that cacophony of all the other birds and the vireos singing all day, every day. And you're like, oh, but then what happens when that vireo's not singing all day, every day? And you're like, something's missing, and it's a vireo. So the words of birds and those that have paved the way before, have been inspiring me in some ways. I'm trying to remember the name of the brother who he's actually the minister at a church in Atlanta. And this brother is I'm not churchy at all, y'all. He's talking about liberation theology, right? And sort of who it is that we are strength-wise, and being unapologetic for being Black and powerful. And I know it's scaring people. And I look at the courage with which he speaks. Anyone who speaks their mind in these times, you kind of painting a target.
Sure.
But
Would it be Jamal Bryant?
Yes.
Yeah. He is.
Yes.
He's on fire.
Yeah, his words are powerful. They move me. They really do. They're moving millions of people right now.
Yeah. And that, yes, that is what, you're up and you're like, oh, okay. Even hearing that, I think, puts us in a different space maybe than we would have been in. And people have said, well, where's the leadership? Well, I think it comes in these little, what I call nano rebellions from lots of different people. But what empowers me is to be me. Sure. That's the first rebellion. Be you. and if you can do that, if you can be you, then I think the rest comes in this genuine fashion that allows us to go forward more powerfully.
Keep sharing your words, people.
Yeah.
That's what Drew's saying. Don't stop what you're doing right now. It may feel hopeless. It may feel that we're in these crazy times, like we're in the twilight zone. But what they want us to do is fold.
Yes.
Right? Like that's the goal. They want us to feel so overwhelmed that this is just not worth doing anymore, that we just shut down shop. And we stop riding in on the wings of joy, like you said earlier. They don't want us to do this. They don't want us talking right now. They don't want us smiling. They don't want us out talking to the birds. They don't want us doing any of that. Right? They want us to fold, and we will not do that. We will not do that, will we, Jason?
No. And I, it's funny. You kind of answered the next question I was going to ask, and it was really around what the importance of passing something on. Right? You've written about that, and looking at where we are now and and we talked about how far we've come with Black Birders Week and everything that kicked off with Black AF and STEM. And so what advice, in addition to continuing to put our words and joy out there, what advice would you give to young Black and brown birders, scientists, nature lovers, that you feel would be most important for them to carry on their journey and maintain some hope about their space in this world?
Jason, I think for me, again, first be you, love you, but then to dream bigger than you can imagine, to see beyond yourself, to see beyond the goals and aspirations that you may have, to know that there's more out there for you. And that passion leads the way to that.
Honestly, bro, Drew, I could probably talk to you for 2-3 hours, but honestly,
you're gonna have to send us a bill if we keep him here, because I respect
your time so much, and I can't think of a better way to end with what you just said. I feel like that's the perfect way to kind of wrap this up. But I just want to say thank you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for joining us today, for sharing your stories, your wisdom, your joy, your love for birds. That word is important. I just want to say thank you. I'm fired up right now. I'm so fired up right now. I can't. I'm so happy, Jay. We're back doing season 3. When I think about it, bro, we're a year in. A year ago in April, we kicked off season 1, and then we did season 2. And here we are a year later, kicking off a 3rd season of the Bird Joy podcast. I love you, man. I'm so excited. I can't believe that this is happening. It happened. I'm going to have so much fun editing this episode. Say that. All the bird songs and stuff. Oh man, this is gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be a work of art.
Well, yes, thank you, Dexter. Thank you, Jason, for having me in, and more importantly, again, beyond me, thank you for what you're doing for us. Thank you for what you're doing for the birds. They speak for themselves, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, on behalf of every wild bird there is, thank you. Because this advocacy goes beyond us, and what you are doing is giving strength to that power of advocacy, of love for one another and for birds. So thank you.
Thank you. You're gonna make me cry. Or blush at least. But just really quickly, is there anywhere folks can find some of your latest work or poetry, or is there anything they should be looking forward to with upcoming appearances?
Yeah, wow, I've got this thing going on, this Writing the Wild, these online, sort of a writing workshop, but really we call it Soul School. My partner, Chrissy Clute, and I, and Dexter and Jason, we will be in Baraboo in June.
Oh, okay. Well, I will be there then. Okay. You let me know when in June. Are you going to International Crane Foundation?
I will be at the Leopold Foundation. I will be giving a talk there, so right around the corner.
Well, I will be there.
Okay, and so I'll be there. Writing the Wild will be there. Got some essays coming up in Emergence magazine about Black beaches and some of those things, and of course integrating the love for birds into that. But just working on a number of things. So staying busy as I can stay. But, looking forward to that first piggy ticky tuck of the first summer tanager, so I can welcome them back to their summer home, and just looking forward to being able to hopefully get out with you guys face to face. I don't know, not too far from the Leopold Center. There's this little prairie and this little remnant, and it's Henslow sparrows in there. Crazy.
Yeah, we get the Henslows. So,
man. I love me some little brown birds.
Right?
Yes,
the little brown birds. Yes. I love that. That's the theme this year for Black Birders Week is the sparrow, because everybody just calls sparrows little brown birds, and Black and brown birders, we definitely can relate to that.
We can relate.
We just little brown birds. You just a little brown bird. I'm Drew. There go Dexter up there, and Jason over there. It's just crazy. So shout out to Black AF and STEM and Black Birders Week. I'm super fired up about that.
Well,
Making
honestly,
English, I
thank
lived in
y'all.
Wisconsin.
I'm super excited. We will definitely be sharing all these resources. I'll make sure I share it with our club members as well, and the underground hiking collective that we started. We've been starting
Sweet.
to lead BIPOC only walks for our members, and it has been beautiful. It really
Nice.
has. Just kind of, we don't even publish these events publicly or anything. We have a private chat, and we had 40 Black and brown folks out last time we did it, and it was just beautiful.
See?
So we're going to continue to build on that and continue to create these spaces. Shout out to Jasmine Banks. Shout out to Christopher Kilgore, Color in the Outdoors. Those are the partners for that initiative, and it has been beautiful. It really has. So we will not stop. We will continue to ride this wave on the wings of joy.
Well, let me know how I can help, please.
I will.
Okay?
I will. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the Bird Joy podcast. We hope you enjoyed exploring the world of birding with us and Dr. J. Drew Lanham. Shout out to the BIPOC flock. We have a ton going on as usual, so go to the website bipocbirdingclub.org.
Yes. Until next time, homie, shout out to the In Color Birding Club folks here in Philly. Go check out our new website. It is very, very colorful.
It's beautiful.
InColorBirding.org. And we'll talk next time, man.
Yeah, please share, subscribe, shout out this podcast to all your fellow bird nerds, and help us spread a little bird joy.
Peace, y'all.
I don't know what I'm going to do now.
Peace. The rest of the day is just going to be,
I got to go back to...
I got to go hang out with some birds, bro. Right? Let me go see if my osprey is on the lake.
See, it's supposed to rain tonight, so tomorrow morning, I think tomorrow morning might be special. So I'm looking forward to that.